Hey everyone! So I think it's about time we start patching up this cap for the little Unimog. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually not to work on the cap itself, because I want to make some kind of jig that I can set this whole thing up in so I can move it around a little more easily. Because even as stripped down as this is, it's still surprisingly heavy and just really awkward to try and move. But also I want something that's a little more stable, because right now it's not really filling me with confidence, this setup. It's not even touching all of the jack stands. So I want something that's a little more stable and something that's much easier to work with. So I'm just going to grab some steel I already have laying around and just fabricate something really quickly. We got to put it in. Yes, yes. Good boy. You heading it up again? This is really nice. Now this whole thing is just going to be a lot easier to handle in here. And also it's at a much better height to be working on it. So now I can go ahead and get to what I was supposed to be doing. Now to start off, there is a bunch of things in here that I'm going to have to take off. Now I would have liked to leave as much of this on here as possible, but some of these things I want to get off and get them cleaned and shined up a bit. And other things I just have to get off to make some more room for myself. So I'll probably end up taking most of it out anyway. So as for the rust work itself, my main goal is not going to be to try and make this look like new. This is a vehicle that I'm going to be using, and it is going to be going off-road. So if I had been spending months trying to make this look absolutely perfect, and I drive right on out and bump it into a tree, I'm just going to break down and cry again. So my main goals are just going to be to patch up all the holes, make it nice and strong and functional, and make it look decent. Now you can actually buy a lot of repair pieces for these old round cabs. There is a bunch of companies that make a lot of the replacement panels to go on here. Now you might have to search in different places to try and find them, but a lot of the panels do exist out there. But for something like this, where it just has little holes all around, going in to buy all those different pieces, it would make this a very costly project very quickly. So I'm going to be trying to make as much of this myself as I can. Luckily, a lot of it is just flat, square pieces and pretty simple to make. Now there is a few things like the roof up here with the whole gutter assembly. That's a little more complicated, so I'm gonna have to try and see what I can do with that. And also some of these pieces where it's rounded. It's a little harder to make, but it's not impossible. So I'm gonna try and see what I can do, and if not, I'm just gonna be buying repair pieces for those tricky parts. Anyway, I'm gonna get to it, and I'm gonna start by removing some of the stuff here that I know I'm gonna have to get out of the way. Well, that was a little more than I had in mind. But now we have all the important things out of this, and also some of the stuff that was just gonna get in the way. There's still something left in here, like the wiring harness for the lights and some other bits and bobs here and there. But I'm gonna deal with that if I have to. I probably will have to, but we'll do it once we get around to those parts. And also this switch here. This is one of those things that's kind of a poor design in an otherwise pretty well thought out vehicle. Because you can't take the wires off here, and the other end of the wires is this really big connector right here. and it all goes through this tiny hole. So the only way to get that off is to take every single pin out of this connector and feed that through that little hole. And when you have to put it back, you have to get all this back in the right place. Not that it's difficult to do or anything, but it's just a lot more work than it needed to be. They could have just made this hole a little bit bigger. With all the other holes here, that would not have made a difference. But I don't even think I have to get it off right now, so it's just gonna stay right there. Now, obviously, I have a really big hole right here, but that's really not my main concern. This is actually fairly easy to fix. My main concern is this roof, this whole roof structure, because, well, it's really not attached in any of the corners anymore. And there's a lot of shapes to this, so it's going to be a little more tricky to do because it's not just this outside, it's also these panels here on the inside. This is all really just one structure, so I may end up having to take this whole thing off. I hope I don't have to, but I may have to. So I think I'm going to save this for last, and I'm going to start out with all this stuff in the bottom. And a lot of it is really just surface rust. So I'm going to start by just hitting it with the wire brush and figure out what is and what isn't holes. And I'll just start patching things up as I find it. It's the first time I'm really having a good look at this, and it honestly doesn't look like it's going to come off here very easily. There's some splines on that shaft that are holding the pedal onto it, and I think it's rusted on there pretty good, but we're just going to give it a try. And once I've got that off, I'm actually going to leave this bit for now because I think I want to start with this over here, because this piece has to be fairly accurately recreated so that I'm going to be able to fit my steering column or steering shaft back through there and line up all the bolt holes. Now, I'm not going to cut off all of this stuff. I know it looks really rusty over here, but it's really just surface stuff. It's because it's been leaking brake fluid from up here by the clutch, so it's just eating away at the paint, but it's all surface stuff. It's still really nice and solid all the way down to about here. That's where it starts getting really bad and thin, so I'm only going to be cutting it up to about here. And once I have this piece done, it'll also give me a pretty good starting point to fix up the other two sides and the back here so that I can eventually make a nice new bottom and put in here. This thing is finally getting a floor. Oh yes. Nice. Alright, so for the first time in who knows how many years, this thing has an actual floor in it again. And in the process, I also got to fix that wonky throttle. Now I have a new tube in there that's going to hold some new bushings, so that should all sit in there really nicely. But of course, I'm not going to put that together just yet. Now this doesn't look exactly like the original floor, but as I was saying in the beginning, I'm not trying to make this completely original. I just wanted this to be nice and strong, and it should be. I did make this from some slightly thicker steel. This is a 2mm plate, so it shouldn't really bend as you step on it, and also this angle that I put in here, that's also going to help with that strength. And also this is the part that is being most abused in this cab, because that's where you have your muddy, snowy boots, so you are going to be rubbing the paint off there. So having that in some thicker steel, it's just going to make it last that much longer before it rusts out again. Now building all this stuff took a little bit longer than I expected, because it turned out everything had a little more angle and shape to it than I initially realized. So shaping out some of all this stuff with my very basic hand tools, it was a little challenging and yeah, time consuming. But I think it worked out pretty well. Now I have already cut out a few more pieces right here. This was stuff that had to go anyway. I just cut it out a little bit early because it left me this little hole here, so I could fit my nice big clamp in there and hold that floor in place while I was tagging that. So I'm just going to carry on and fill out these holes, but I'm not going to be filming every single patch that I put into this cab, because it's really just going to be a repeat of what I've just done by cutting out a piece, make a new panel, weld it in, clean it up, and moving on. So it's going to be a little bit tedious to watch me do that over and over again. But if there is some specific parts of this where you would like to see how I'm doing it, let me know in the comments and I might just film those parts. Now speaking of comments, this is about the point where I'm going to need you guys' input for something else. Because of course all this repair work on the cab, that is leading up to us painting this thing. So it's about time to start thinking about what color this is going to be, the body and the bed. Now some of you may have already noticed that I kind of like the color green. And they did actually make a few of these 421s for military use, so they were painted in that military green color. However, this one being more of a civilian agricultural kind of Unimog, we should probably stick with that theme. I think it would suit it a lot better. Now the original color on this, that was this very dark yellow, almost orangey color that it has on the inside. I'm not a huge fan of that. It's a very 70s industrial. It's not super exciting. And I guess someone else thought the same way, because this was painted green at some point. Now I'm not sure if we should be keeping this lighter green color and just give the bed the same kind of color, or if we should do something else entirely. I'm not all that creative when it comes to these visuals, so it would be really cool to have you guys input on what kind of color would look good on this thing. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments, whether it's about the paint or something else. I always enjoy reading through that. So that's going to be it for this one. So thank you guys for watching along, and we'll see you in the next one.